Today's show, as ever, brought to you by our friends at racingpicks.com. Picks and analysis from fantastic handicappers and horse players like Matt Bernier, who's been on an incredible hot streak of late. You want to read his stuff? Super duper easy. Simply go to racingpicks.com, sign up. You just have to give your email where it says expert picks. You'll get great content from him. I've been contributing there as well. Andrew Champagne. There's a lot of good information, all for free. Racingpicks.com. Hello and welcome to the racingpicks.com Players Podcast. This is our special Woodbine Takeover edition. Loaded card at Woodbine on Saturday. 13 races, including a couple of big stakes. This show, a little bit different format than what we've done in the past. We're going to have some guests to do deep dives on these big Woodbine races. You'll hear them coming up in a minute. We're also going to have a special segment sponsored by our friends at StableDuel, in which we talk about a special StableDuel game that's happening on Saturday. And last but not least, we're going to look ahead to some international racing for the first time on this show. We've got Win and You're In Breeders' Cup action on Saturday and Sunday in Ireland. Stick around. Going to be a great show, and our first guest is coming up right after this. Do you want to keep up with everything going on in the Money Media Network? No easier way than our newsletter. We put all of our content there, links to other things we think horse players will enjoy, and maybe some cool new stuff coming soon. Very, very simple. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/email gets you to this screen. You put in your email address, and you'll see everything we've got coming. We don't overwhelm. One, maybe two emails in a busy week. And again, the goal is to just keep everybody apprised of what is going on. Join us today in themoneypodcast.com/email. Next up, returning to the show, a favorite guest of mine I most recently had the pleasure of talking to for our Kentucky Derby Monster Pod. We're bringing him right back to talk about the Queen's Plate from Woodbine. And when I say from Woodbine, look at the picture. He is right at Woodbine right now. Jason Portuondo. Jason, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well. See, you guys are at Woodbine. That's rare territory because we can't allow anybody here other than workers. So appreciate the invite. And by the way, I'm sure you tell all your fellow people that they're your favorites, right? I'll take it, though. I'll take it.
There you go. My father was known for that. He would always say, and I do this sometimes too, a very special guest. And somebody at one point called him on it. It was like, wait, if they're all very special guests, like, are any of them special? And his response, and I could say the same to you about, one of my favorites, is when they're with me, they're special. When you're with
me. Hang on. I love it.
So let's do a little scene setting since you're there. Yes. You're there at Woodbine. What's the atmosphere like? Obviously, so different. We're getting used to this concept of racing and big races with no fans, but Queen's Plate in particular, I imagine, might be strange because it is such a social event.
100%, Peter. It's just like the Derby, right? I mean, it's more than just a race. It's pageantry. It's about the people, the partying. And I know the Derby numbers were down. I mean, I'm going to say three things quickly. One, there was an obvious horse. Two, a smaller field with just 15. And three, most importantly, a lot of people go to the Derby just because it's that spectacle, and they'll bet while they're there. But unlike you and I, they're not hardcores that will bet regardless of where they are. So I get it. In terms of us, preparation clearly giving way to anticipation. We are ready to go, but usually by this time I'm seeing all of the hoopla and the fanfare and all the different exhibits and musical setups and partying tents, and none of that's happening. So it's kind of an eerie scene this year, but the race is a couple sleeps away, and I can't wait.
I know your colleagues at Woodbine have been very dedicated to this Queen's Plate at Home initiative. What can you tell us about, where can folks find more info about how maybe they can try to bring a little bit of that into their homes the way we did last weekend, trying to show folks how to make mint juleps and whatnot?
Oh, nice. Well, we had a huge contest. It's over now. I was actually thinking of staying at home if I could have won this thing, because they gave away a 70-inch TV to put in your backyard or wherever you want. They brought food. They're going to bring you drinks. they're going to come and dress you, Peter. We have stylists that are coming to dress you so you can feel just like you're part of the pageantry, even though we don't have it this year. We gave them betting money. We gave them everything they could possibly want. And by the way, I apologize now. We're right in line with the flight path of the airport.
Pearson. Yep.
So that's going to happen quite a bit.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay. We've
So
got the verisimilitude, and it's when flash forward into the future. It's a good lesson to folks about how easy it is to get to Woodbine during normal times because the airport is literally right there. I did it as a day trip last year, essentially for the Queen's Plate. I'm going to miss being there this time around, but lots of good info over on the Woodbine website about that. But let's get down to brass tacks here, Jason, and talk about this year's race. I keep looking at it and I keep coming up with different opinions every time I look, honestly. Maybe what we'll do, if you don't mind, let's talk through the field and then we'll sort of 100%. Give a verdict on it.
Yep. If this bee will leave me alone.
Oh, no, we can't have you getting stung. That's not good. We'll start with the morning line favorite, Clayton. And I did a show earlier today with Ernie Perry, who had, I thought, a very interesting note about Clayton, about how some of that greenness and the head carriage that has been a little weird in the races, he thought looked a lot better in the last workout. If Clayton improves significantly off the form we've already seen, there's a world in which they're all running for second. Now, I know you're not somebody who typically likes to gravitate towards the favorites, so I'm sure you have something, I'm going to take a wild guess that you have something more creative than Clayton, but I feel like the conversation about this race should probably start with this one and then, of course, Curlin's Voyage. But where do you stand with Clayton?
I agree with you, first of all, in terms of Clayton. He's got a ton of upside. Yes, he's got that weird way of carrying his head. I thought he should have been more decisive in victory when it came to the plate trial. He got the perfect setup. He sat in the pocket, to use a harness-like term. And, when he got fresh air, he just kind of hung. He didn't switch his leads. He wasn't that impressive, but he's got a lot of upside in terms of he's not as seasoned as some of these other horses. And, we're asked to do a top 5 Queen's Plate ranking. He's my number 1, even though I probably should have given that to the filly because she's a little more distinguished. But I went Curlin's Voyage after Clayton. Then I went Merveilleux. I threw in Halo again, as well as, I think, Dotted Line. But, yeah, Clayton, if he puts it all together on plate day, wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And Hernandez, has had success in this race before in 2015 with Shaman Ghost. So there's a lot to like about Clayton. He was my top pick. Keyword being was, because I got something else for you, Peter, under my hat. But Clayton, you got to respect him, and I think he's got a big shot.
Let's talk Curlin's Voyage for a minute. Produced the faster speed figure than Clayton the last day. The only thing that makes me hesitate about her is I did think she got an absolutely perfect setup last time. What do you think Curlin's Voyage's chances are in this year's Queen's Plate?
Big shot. Big shot, especially, back in the day, it was kind of like, whoa, we got a filly, tackling the boys. Now it's just become the norm, and they've had success. I mean, so that wouldn't surprise me if she added her name to the ever-growing list of, Oaks Plate winners. And I respect her. That last race in the Oaks, almost every one of us here, in terms of punters, we tried to beat her that day. It was kind of the put up or shut up race. She put up, but I think all of us know we got to shut up and just give this filly her due. She is the richest earner in Canada so far this year. She's coming off back-to-back wins. I was a little bit bothered by the drifting she did late in the race, so I don't know. I'm going to try and beat her again, and maybe she's going to prove me wrong, but she is legit, and Husbands has done this filly thing before. Lexi Lou, I want to say 2014, if my memory serves me correctly. So she is a legit threat, and she's kind of the Rodney Dangerfield, the but horse. She just keeps winning, doesn't get that respect, and we keep saying, yeah, but no, she's for real. She's for real.
We'll talk through the rest of your top 5 as well. You mentioned Merveilleux. Do you see any reason why she should reverse form with Curlin's Voyage this time? I was thinking her ceiling might be an underneath placing in this spot.
Could be. But as Peyton Manning once said, Omaha, because this is my audible. I'm going to Merveilleux. I like her a lot. I went back and I dissected that race, and even though she put blinkers on for the first time, Pete, she wasn't involved early on, which is okay. Gave her a chance to get used to navigating through traffic, and she did it pretty well until about the 2.5. We're going around the far turn, and you saw Hernandez just tapping on the brakes, nowhere to go. Then finally he asked her. She started picking things up. Then you get just outside the 8th pole, and again, she got kind of sandwiched, and she's not the biggest of horses. Took her a while to bully her way through. Once she did, she took off, Peter, and I don't know what the last, 8th was in, but I'm thinking maybe 11 and change, if it can be that fast. It looked like it was going that fast, and then she had a huge gallop out. So I really feel like Merveilleux is the one flying under the radar. I realize, Kevin Attard's got 2 in here. Clayton is the more heralded one. We got 2 fillies in here. Curlin's Voyage is the more heralded one, but I really feel like Merveilleux is going to love a mile and a quarter. She's actually my top pick for the upset.
I love the case you're making, and I got to go back and watch that trip. I saw the traffic I saw the one spot of trouble,
right,
but I didn't notice that there were 2, and the gallop out, that's also a big angle for one going a little bit farther today. And there should be plenty of speed to set up the late runs of both these fillies. I like where you're coming with that. I'm going to definitely take another look. Let's talk Halo again for a second from Steve Asmussen, this one who was second to Clayton last time out and did have the excuse of not the smoothest beginning anyway. You're leaving this one in the mix?
I am. I got to respect him. Big fan of his going back to last year. He won the race. You want to win, but you don't want to win. We're talking about the Coronation Futurity. This is a race where since 1975-76, we haven't had a horse pull off the double. Norcliffe was the last to do it for the Hall of Fame trainer Roger Atfield. By the way, it's weird not having him here for the 3rd straight year. And no Mark Casse, too, by the way, for the first time since 2010. But Halo again won that race. Now can he complete the double and finally end the jinx? Could very possibly happen. Wasn't beaten all that far to Clayton in the plate trial, just a half length. He could exact revenge. Steve Asmussen said yesterday at the draw the horse is working really well in the interim since that last effort. He expects a big thing from him. Finally a chance to put 2 races close together for this son of Speightstown. And yeah, for me, he's in the conversation. And Contreras, he's won this race twice before, ironically enough, both with fillies. Inglorious 2011 and then Holy Helena in 2017.
The fillies' record of success in this race is tremendous, and another reason to take a longer look at the one you put up here, Merveilleux.
Yeah.
I keep messing up French pronunciation. I'm going to get in trouble here. It's the Italian keeps coming through. I'm going to stick with Clayton. I feel like you've got all this potential, and then just that little bit of inside information of the horse training better and looking more professional. I feel like it's like the old thing you talk to a coach about an athlete, let's say a runner. Who do you want? The one already running top speed or the one running short of top speed but having terrible mechanics? It's like you can see the reason for improvement. Now, I'd be a lot happier about this if we were dealing with a price longer than 2-1. But in this big full field, I wonder if we maybe can get a tick up from there. Anything else? Any others at prices you might want to mention in this race to potentially come up and run into the number? I have a goofy one to mention, but I want to let you go first in that regard.
Well, dotted line, I still respect him. I know he ended off last year in really good form, winning, back-to-back races, including the Frost King as well as the King Garby. I got to respect that horse still with a chance to be in play. As for a big number, this race has a bit of everything. We got horses that haven't even won on synthetic that are trying to do so on the biggest stage as a 3-year-old. We got a maiden in here, Belichick. I think it's a little bit tough for him. If I threw a horse out there that is a bigger number, Mighty Heart, Josie Carroll. She's won this race before. She's the only female trainer to have won this race. She's done it twice now. She sends out a troika, including this one. And I know he's really light on experience. She just started, with this guy on Tapeta in July, and it was a really good race. I think he could be sneaky good. He's got good tracking speed. She's a perfect 2 for 2 with Daisuke Fukumoto. And obviously, the only thing better than 2 for 2 is 3 for 3. I did the math for you there, Pete. But yeah, I really feel like Mighty Heart is one that can sort of fly under the radar and maybe, pump up the exotics. Not so much as a win threat, maybe in the bottom of your tries and supers.
I like that idea. I'm not giving up on Belichick for 3rd and 4th in this spot. This is a horse that was talked about for this race before he ever set on the racetrack in the afternoon. Had all his thunder taken right away by the horse that we talked about in our Derby Monster Pod. But then I felt like the race on Synth last time, I felt like it might have been just too early of a move. I don't think
Possible.
I don't think he hung as much as the dynamics didn't favor him. I love this breeding for a mile and a quarter lemon drop kid out of the Montjumer. It's a huge ask. On figures, the horse cannot crack the exacta, but I think there are enough reasons for this one to improve and run on and get at least a little piece. So I'm going to leave in. And Ernie seconded the idea that the horse had been training well, which did make me think, okay, probably overmatched, probably not today, but, third or fourth. Well, I'm going to go for it. But that's
it's 2020. Anything goes. You might be onto a good one here. And we should mention as well, a $300,000 purchase, second most expensive one in the field behind FF Rocket, who was $525,000. And Belichick, they're high on this horse. They really are. So maybe you're finding a bit of a snake in the grass here, right, for the Hall of Famer and Josie Carroll.
We'll see what we can do as far as that goes. Yeah. What about the rest of this card? We just in terms of spot plays, are there any particular areas you're excited about betting or horses you're looking forward to seeing run?
I will give you a couple horses that have me a little bit giddy. We're going to go to race number 6, a first-time starter by the name of Secret Reserve. I think this horse could be a big-time debut threat for trainer Mike Mattini. He recently won a stakes event with a firster by the name of El Bayern. Horse from post 11 broke in front, then went back to last, rallied past the entire field to win. Not exactly your conventional trip for a debuting 2-year-old, but the horse did it. So this horse, Secret Reserve, has been working with El Bayern and outworking that one. So keep an eye on the 4-horse, Secret Reserve, debuting with blinkers, the son of Giant Gizmo, coming up. Race number 6 on Saturday. That is the 4-horse. And then there's one other horse that intrigues me. I don't know if we're going to get a price, but in the opener, I think there's a ton of pace in the race. And if it percolates like the way I'm thinking it will, Pete, Wedgwood. Sahin Savachi is going to ride for trainer Mike Keogh going into the Hall of Fame. Well, it would have been this year, but obviously no ceremony with COVID knocking out everything. I really feel like this horse last time out, troubled trip, just needs the table set, and he could come to eat at a nice price. So a couple horses that should be good numbers on the board on should be a fabulous Saturday of racing.
Oh, that's great stuff. And Secret Reserve, I will say that type of info often does get acknowledged and spread around. This is a horse, rather than waiting to start bets with, I'd look for pick bets, maybe even this early pick 5 that starts in race 2, and try to get alive through various pick bets. You might be able to get a little bit more the best of the number when it comes to a runner like Secret Reserve. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about race 13, at least quickly, Jason, because we've got this mandatory payout in the Super High 5. Give us the update on what that carryover's up to, and if you have a handicapping thought on the race, I'd love to hear it.
$211,780. So we'll be well over $1 million. And you know what? Our numbers, they should be huge. I know we don't have the public on track, but just think about this. No New York action with them on pause till the 18th, I think, back at Belmont. No California this weekend as well. So I think we're going to get a lot of eyes from your side of the border, and we appreciate that money. And I'm looking at a horse by the name of Perfect Cat that I think has a big-time shot in this. Actually, hold on. That's another one I'm giving you. Sorry for the 11th race. I'm giving you a bonus pick. Let me get to the 13th.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Yeah, I take that one as well. But, once you get to this last race, I'm going to go, speaking of outside numbers, Secret Path. The blinkers come off this horse for the first time in a long time, and I love that angle. Really feel like this horse has been kind of hanging. So sometimes, you put the blinkers on, it can have that effect of helping a horse take a step forward. Really feel that the same thing can happen when you open them up for the first time in a while. And Don McRae, Patrick Husbands, that is a solid combination. So I'm starting my ticket with the 11. I'm going to include some others in there, like the 6 Guesstimation, who is going to be a pace factor for Cassie and Hernandez. Giant Critic has a chance to be a part of the fray there. Justin Stein's going to ride for Ralph Biamont. And then Green Growth off the drop, the 9-horse in the field. I really feel like the easier company should allow this horse to be more of a factor early and give the horse to be, a chance to be prominent throughout. So those are the numbers that I'm going to circle around and then just sort of mix and match from there. But I really do want to put the 11 as my key horse there in the finale.
Love the sound of it. Now loop back to the other one that came up there briefly. Give us the scoop.
Yeah, that was a Freudian slip. Maybe that was meant to be a Perfection Cat. This is for Atfield and Hernandez. This horse needed that last race. This basically short, I'd say maybe 4 months of 2 years. So you miss between December of 2018 and then you come back July of 2020. And the horse nearly won, got beat ahead that day. Some are going to say, well, that was the race to have this one. May bounce off that effort. Yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible in racing, but I really feel like the horse is going to be so much better after that one. And I don't know if we're going to get 6-1 like we have on the line, Pete, but I still think we get about 3 or 4-1 because there's a ton of options in this race. So keep an eye on Perfection Cat. That's number 12 coming up in race 11 on Saturday.
I tend to agree with you. It's not like this is 2 weeks back off a 595-day layoff. There's been some time for this one to improve. I love that thought and love having you on the show. Appreciate you.
Anytime.
Very, very cool. We'll be watching with great interest this weekend and following along, my friend. Thank you very much for your time today.
Hey, we appreciate the support. So, yeah, anytime. You know the number. Just give me a ring, and I'm there for you.
Thanks, buddy. The Saratoga season may be over, but I wanted to give some shout-outs to our key Saratoga partners from this year, businesses that are still open and ready for your support. We do have a lot of people in upstate New York, a lot of people who will be planning to come here next year, and you need to know about these places. First of all, where I'm sitting right now, Walt and Whitman Brewing Company. They do fantastic stuff. I'm sitting up in the cafe. There's the little brew pub downstairs. The beer is great. The food is great. The space is cool. You're going to want to check these guys out. We'll give a shout out to the Brentwood as well. Been doing live shows from the Brentwood all summer long. Amazing little cocktail bar, limited hours these days, but great drinks nonetheless, and a super safe, easy place to stay if you're coming to Saratoga. No shared space. Lots of COVID protocols, and they're on it. And it's just a fantastic situation over there at the Brentwood. And one more I want to shout out because we had so much fun. My little daughter, Perrin, actually won Female Ninja of the Week over at the Saratoga Ninja Lab. She's so proud. We're going to frame it and hang it up on the wall. Dan and the team over there do a fantastic job. Very entertaining. Kids camps, open play, and for older kids and young adults as well. Lots of great activity. Check out the Saratoga Ninja Lab and think about that if you're going to be coming here next summer and you need something for the kids to do or something for yourself to do. Check it out today, Saratoga Ninja Lab. Next up on the show, another returning guest to talk about what you could call, I suppose, the secondary feature on Saturday, the Grade 2 Canadian Stakes. Welcome back to the show, Ashley Mailloux. Ashley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Things are good. I'm really psyched for this Queen's Plate. And, Woodbine have been a really good partner for us the last couple of years. And it's great to see them have this weekend where I think they're really going to have a chance to shine. And I think it's a cool card. I think it's really interesting. And I definitely wanted some help and wanted to reach out to you to do a little bit of a deeper dive on this Grade 2 Canadian Stakes. I figure we can talk through some of the key contenders, and we'll have to lead off with the morning line favorite, who I keep coming back to in this spot, despite the very long layoff. Talking, of course, about number 10, Cambier Park. This is a filly who had the success at the Grade 1 level last year, showed versatility, which I love, coming from out of it, being on the lead, and just a filly who presumably, and the recent work suggests this might be possible, has improved since the last time we've seen her on the racetrack. I don't love betting horses who are favorites off a nearly year-long layoff, but I just keep coming back here. What are your feelings about Cambier Park as we look into this Grade 2 Canadian on Saturday?
When you see a horse off a long layoff like that, I mean, it's nearly a year, right? 11 months. It is always concerning. And then when you see it's Chad Brown, it becomes, I don't know, half a concern in my opinion.
Yes.
We just saw this recently in at Monmouth Park. I've been doing the expert picks there for Twin Spires, and he had a horse, I think, closer to 2-year layoff. And I believe she ran second or third. And you're like looking there and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. You're like, it's Chad Brown though. It gives you a little bit more confidence. And I think with her, she's a 4-year-old filly, and she's really done nothing wrong. Looking at her stats, I mean, she's a 5-time winner. And I think the thing that you hit on, Pete, is that she's done it kind of all over the place. She's been on the front end. That's what she did last time at Keeneland. She took him kind of gate-to-wire fashion and still won by a length under Johnny V. But typically she comes from out of it. So I think having those options is good for her. And you see who's going to ride her, Rafael Hernandez. I mean, it's hard not to endorse her. I mean, obviously the price is going to be short, 6-5. Hopefully she'll stay at that. I do think because it is a bigger field and just the layoff that she will be around that. She might even float up. But we know everyone's going to bet Chad. It's Chad off the long layoffs. The concern is less, and it's a graded stakes. I mean, it's hard to ignore.
Who do you think the main danger is to Cambria Park here?
I was torn. I mean, I did like Theodora B a little bit. I thought last time out it was a really big performance in the Dance Smartly. And I think if you liked her, you'd probably look to Elizabeth Way. But a horse that actually has kind of disappointed me in the last two, and this is like her final, I guess, try that I'm going to put her on a ticket, is I really like Amalfi Coast. I think kind of looking at her 2 starts back, she went a mile on the turf. She was still closing to miss by 2 1/4, and kind of looking at how the trip pans out, she's always looking for ground. So at the mile, it wasn't enough. Then last time out, they actually put her on the Tapeta and they cut her back to 7/8. And once again, she was kind of making ground up late, and then she actually stalled a little bit. And that's what it says. I mean, it wasn't the best performance from her, but I have to think kind of at this distance, at a 1.125 on the turf is probably where I'd like to see her race. I mean, the distance at that point shouldn't be the problem. It's just going to be, can she compete at this level? She is facing some tough competition. So for me, she's going to offer value. I mean, she's 6-1 morning line. That was a great price on her.
Yeah, that certainly is square when you look at the best work that she's put forth in her 11 start career. What about the pace in here, Ashley? How do you see it playing out? I was thinking that Cambria Park might be sort of in between where we've seen her in the last couple of runs, but certainly I don't really feel like she's going to be on the lead. Just looking at pace figures, it seems like there's a bunch who will be in front of her, but this is a spot where I'm definitely sympathetic to the Amalfi Coast idea. Obviously, I need Cambria Park, but I want somebody who's maybe going to be positioned in front of those two as well. I'm just not sure who that's going to be. How do you see the pace playing out?
It's kind of interesting because when you go through the field, and I'm just skimming through the past performances we talk, I mean, you look at horses like Another Time, the 5, who has made the lead or been really close to it. And you can kind of see that race 3 starts back. I mean, they're going a mile on a turf in the Nassau, grade 2. They still went 46-4 to the half. They were still cooking. It was very fast off the opening quarter to get a half like that. And this was a horse that almost took them kind of on the front end by neck. So hasn't been able to make the lead in the last 2. And I think last time out, they just went much faster. And at that distance, probably not the surface either that she wants to be on. So she's potentially going to be out there. I think Elizabeth Way is not going to be too far out of it. I don't think that she prefers that. I mean, when you kind of look at her race at Gulfstream Park, she's won on front end fashion and she's been able to close. But when you look at that race on March 28th in the Orchid, she really wasn't making that move that she has in the past. So looking at her performances there up at Woodbine, I think she's going to be towards the front. I don't know if Emma's going to put her on the front. It's hard to say, but you can kind of go through here. And it is a little tricky, I think, just looking at the times and the past performances to really decide what the pace scenario is going to be, especially at this distance. Now, another one, who's shown some speed, Bold Script has gotten to the front before. I don't think against this group that Bold Script will be on the front. I don't think can kind of hang with these ones, but I don't know. How do you kind of see it shaping up?
I like your case for Another Time. I feel like the Nassau might be the key form line to look at. With it was a fast pace that day looking at the clock, but it's interesting on the Time Form US figures anyway was coded neutrally, and Elizabeth Way ends up getting the better of Another Time that day. Maybe that's the key. If the pace does hold together, if for some reason Cambria Park gets hung out, if Amalfi Coast isn't the same as she once was, maybe there's a nice little Elizabeth Way as the best of speed case to be made in this spot, coming out of that race in the Dance Smartly, which wasn't overly visually impressive or anything, but did have a trip excuse and does have some interesting back class. How you think Elizabeth Way can maybe pull off the upset in this spot for the master Roger Atfield?
I think she could. I really liked her, looking at her races at Gulfstream Park this winter. I think they had high hopes for her because when she came over here, she was already ready to roll. You always wonder about these horses in their first North American start, how they're going to fare, because even some of the trainers that are more notorious for having them ready to roll, their win percentage isn't even that high. They're just more likely than others. And it's always a tall task. So I think the way that she handled it, she won 2 races in a row. One of them was a grade 3. Then, like I said, in the Orchid, the grade 3 in her third start, she also faced really tough mares. Mean Mary is no joke. I mean, she's such a good horse in the Grand Motion barn. And so to finish third behind her, I think that's still a great effort and nothing to knock on this filly at all. I was disappointed with her last time. I just didn't see that late kick or anything really in the stretch. She kind of just rallied some, but not enough. It just wasn't what I was expecting from her. I really loved her in that spot, but that was going a mile and a quarter. Now we're going a mile and an eighth. I just think the setup might be slightly different for her. So yeah, I think she's the upset material. She'd be one that I would definitely think could get the way and beat Chad's horse, just also being fitter than Chad's horse at this point, at least from a race perspective.
Let's pause on Theodora B. We were talking off air about how this one is also cross-entered for Kentucky Downs on Sunday. I'm stealing your info because you were the one who told me that. But if she does decide to go here, do you think she can have a say?
I do. I don't necessarily think last time out going a mile and a quarter, they went pedestrian. I don't think I see her necessarily being on the lead. I mean, she does have the rail and you don't know. She's made the lead in the past and they've gone faster, but typically it's when they go really slow and she makes it to the front and kind of has things go her way. Her race in the Trillium, though, I mean, that was on the Tapeta. It wasn't a good performance at all. And she actually took a lot of play in there, but looking at her on the turf, I think those are the performances that stick out. I mean, all 5 of her wins have come over the turf. She's actually quite the nice mare, and kind of seeing who she's faced in the past. She's had some good races and graded stakes, so I would use her. I just don't think necessarily her last race is the trip that I see her getting here.
While we're talking about the Dance Smartly, and we've already talked about a couple of the runners coming out of there, but Art of Almost, I think, is worth mentioning, at least for vertical players, as a potentially interesting long shot, who was maybe a little bit against the flow last time in the Dance Smartly, came widest of all, only beaten 3 lengths for everything. Do you think Art of Almost is worth a look, more for underneath, but as a price to maybe mix in with some of the logicals?
Yeah, I actually think in terms of exotics, like a try here specifically, or maybe if you're looking at a superfecta, there are value horses in here. I don't necessarily see it kind of chalk out, as we'd say. I think kind of looking at Art of Almost, this is like the sleeper Roger Attfield horse in the field. I think I agree completely with you last time out that just trip was not going to work, and was 5-1 that day, was still respected on the tote board, but the way that race set up for her, it just wasn't going to pan out. And I think even her race before that, she just had to really chase throughout, and she wasn't close to it. And I kind of want to draw a line, especially through race 2 back. But you see her turf race where she won 3 starts back. Forwardly placed just a length or 2 off the leaders. It set up pretty nice for her, and the pace was fine to go into, and she got the job done by a neck. But looking at her last year, I mean, she still has looking at her last year in the Dance Smartly, I mean, she was 3rd in that race. Then they actually sent her to Arlington Park at a mile and an eighth, so today's distance. And I thought that was a huge race from her because she was dead last early on and had a ton of work to do late. She only missed by 2 1/4, and she did face good horses that day as well. So I wonder, too, if she's just needed some races to get back into form. And kind of looking at her, I don't really love her on the Tapeta. So I think she did win on the Tapeta and she broke her maiden on it, but I think she's more of a turf filly in my opinion. So maybe depending what the pace scenario comes up, hopefully she won't get a similar situation as last time where she's in a position where it's just not going to work for her. But I would use her. I mean, if she's anywhere near 15-1, I don't see why she couldn't get 3rd or 4th. I mean, she did that last time out and she faced several fillies in this field.
Yeah, on form, she makes sense. And at 10-1 or higher, which I'm pretty sure we are going to get, that's the long shot I'm interested in. I'll have plenty of Cambier Park, and I definitely see backing up, depending on what I'm doing in the races around this. I liked your case for Amalfi Coast, and I definitely like Elizabeth Way. If you held my feet to the fire for numbers, I'd probably call it 10-3-9. Any other wagering thoughts on this one before I ask you quickly about the rest of this card?
No, for me, I think the 3 and the 10 stood out. I obviously like the 6 as well. Theodora B is just a head scratcher. I'm just concerned too about the price that she's going to offer, 5-1, just based off that win. Yes, she won the Dance Smartly, but everything went her way. I'm not keen on that, but I have to think personally, Chad's horse is going to be favored, and then I think Elizabeth Way is going to be second choice. I think that's going to be pretty clear just based on their performances.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. We'll see. I still think hopefully there'll be an opportunity to eke out some value in the picks around this one. How about the rest of this card? Is there another place in particular you're excited to be wagering?
I mean, I feel biased for saying this in general. Obviously, I love the Queen's Plate. It's just a special race for the Canadian Triple Crown, and then it'll be exciting, especially for me, just to see who's going to go to 40 next for the Prince of Wales, if we'll see the winner go. Sometimes they go, sometimes they don't. It's kind of like we've seen recently in the last 2 years in the Kentucky Derby, where they don't necessarily go to the Preakness. But the horse that I like the most, I'll say, in the Queen's Plate, I really like Steve Asmussen's horse, Halo Again. I'm really excited about this one, and I have a feeling that similar to Tone Broke last year. If the performance is good enough, maybe top 4 finish, this one will go over to 40, or he just has that dirt experience and broke the maiden at Churchill on the dirt. I thought the price at 5-1, if I can get anywhere near that'll be exciting. But it's interesting. If I had to pick a price horse, I like one of the fillies, and I like the 2, Merveilleux. I really think she could get a good trip, depending what the pace is. And this is a race I talked a little bit about with some people yesterday. I'm not sure how the pace is going to unfold. I don't think it's going to be slow. I don't think it's going to be wickedly quick. I think it'll be an honest pace, but it'll be interesting because there's a couple horses in here that I think if they made the lead, they could be kind of dangerous. I don't think they're going to let anyone walk, and we've seen that in the past. So I'm really excited about the Queen's Plate, and kind of looking at the other races. I really focused on just the stakes races, but the Bison City is always a great race to watch too. Kind of thinking of after the Woodbine Oaks, a lot of the horses go into this spot, the fillies, and A Fleet Catherine looks extremely tough. I'm not going to lie, but we always talk about exotics. You know, you and I either talk about pick 4s and pick 5s, or who we playing in a try or a super. Because when we talked about Derby, we talked about Max Player. Like, would you use them underneath? In this case, I think the filly that I would use underneath at a price is Roger Atfield horse, Gun Society. I'd like to use her on a 3rd on a couple of tries, because I think she got some confidence back last time out when she finished 2nd in the Eternal Search. And for me, that was a huge step up from her other 2 performances. And I love seeing 10-1 morning line. So she's kind of my sleeper. But you know, I've just skimmed over the other races, and I haven't made a lot of conclusions yet. And a big reason is there's a lot of maiden races on the card, which is going to really shake things up, and maybe will turn into some good payouts and exotics, and even in the multi-race sequence, because you never know what's going to happen there.
That is the hope. You get some interesting stuff in, and we have a whole show with Clocker Ernie Perry going through, and Doug McPherson. They had some interesting thoughts on some of those maiden races, some price horses to maybe include in the mix. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the show and being a regular for us on the In the Money Network. We hope to have you back on again soon, and wish you Godspeed this weekend.
Thanks, Pete. Good luck.
This next segment of the show is brought to you by our friends at StableDuel. Exciting new way to play the horses that combines traditional horse playing with fantasy sports. It's really cool and fun. You're going to be hearing about it more in this next segment of the show. Just know there's going to be a lot of exciting new StableDuel content coming soon, and great games at Woodbine this very weekend. You're going to hear a lot more about that right now. Next up on the show, we've got a man who you're probably familiar with if you check out the content over on inthemoneypodcast.com. He's been on various shows with us, but not for a while. And the reason I reached out to him today is that he's had plenty of success over on StableDuel. I believe he's even a top 10 ranked player on the site. We'll get confirmation on that in a minute. Welcome back to the In the Money airwaves, John Camardo.
Thanks, Pete. It's been quite a while since we've spoken. I think it was actually almost a year ago now when we were in Lexington. So excited to be back. A lot of stuff has happened since then, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. So very excited to talk today.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, let's start with just a general StableDuel question. You've been pretty active on the site since the beginning. For those who've never played on it, what do you like about it? How is it different than traditional horse playing?
I think what I like most about it is the ability to get a whole day's worth of action for as low as like $5. It's a pretty low barrier to entry situation. I can essentially bet every single race without actually having to have money on every race. And it's kind of like a different way of looking at the world. You don't have to be right. You have to be kind of almost right to score points. You have to be right enough to get to the top 10 or whatever the payouts go to, but you just have to be like kind of right to potentially place and cash.
I want to get your thoughts on some of the horses you'll be looking at, if you don't mind, showing your hand a bit for Woodbine on Saturday. But first, what are the games going to be? What sort of price points are available for StableDuel's Woodbine games on Saturday?
So the Woodbine game on Saturday is $10, but it looks to me like there are going to be 2 separate Kentucky Downs buy-ins, one for $5, one for $50 that pays to the top 10. And there'll also be a Golden Gate game that pays to the top 3, which should be very interesting for a $5 buy-in on Saturday as well. I think this is the first time there'll be a Golden Gate game that I've seen, at least. And I've played, I think, 99% of the days that they've offered.
That's good. A relationship with Stronach probably means some other exciting content coming down the line. Obviously, StableDuel being an important partner of ours, we'll be bringing you all the information about new partners. So that's good to hear. Let's talk Woodbine specifically. What are some general tips you'd have for people approaching this for the first time? What types of horses are you looking for? And do you have a few ideas? You don't have to give out everything, but do you have a few examples of horses you're interested in playing?
Yeah. So typically what I like to do, I have a computer model that spits out odds and probabilities that I tend to use. And so overall, what I like to do is I look at the whole card and try to find a couple of horses that are super short prices that I'm potentially willing to pay up for. Kind of like the highest likelihood winners on the card, maybe 2 or 3 of those I'll find. And what I'll also do, and this is from kind of some experience that I went through, is start from the back to the front. I like to try to finish strong as opposed to start strong and kind of speed and fade, if you will. Never a good feeling when you're in the top 5 and you need a 20-to-1 shot to come in the last race because you didn't have very much money left over. So that's generally kind of what I like to do. Woodbine has plenty of races on Saturday, so you could go ahead and pick one horse in 10 of the races. Or if you feel pretty good about an exacta in one race, you could try to go for an exacta. The only problem with that is if you were to pick one horse from every race, in theory, your score would be potentially about 600 if you were to score out on every horse, which is pretty unlikely. If you choose an exacta, you start to chip away at your maximum point totals. So just something to keep in mind. However, if you have a pretty good feeling about a couple horses in a race, or you really like turf sprints for whatever reason, which I frankly don't, it might make sense for you to go down that path. So just some general pointers that I've sort of picked up along the way in having played plenty of games.
I think there's some good stuff there. It feels like there might be a little bit of a bias towards people spending money early. Is that why spending money late seems to be more effective for you?
I really think it's just because of the way that the horses are laid out, right? You see the first race first, so naturally maybe you go to the first race first. You read through the PPs probably front to back, right? So I think that's part of my problem is I start with the first race, end up getting through 6 or 7 races, realize I'm going to run short on money relatively soon. And so, yeah, generally what I've started to do is start from the back to the front. Typically the better races are at the end, in addition to kind of what I said before. So I kind of have a better feel for the stakes races and the allowance races as well. So kind of a combination of all those things.
It sounds to me like very much in traditional horse playing or even traditional contest playing, some of these ideas. Find the race where you have the strongest opinion, where you have a view. And that's where you get into that idea of, maybe you just have a super strong opinion that a certain race has to come 2-4 or 4-2. And, wherever those strong opinions are, that's where you want to be getting involved. That's the idea that comes to me from traditional horse playing. And then the contest idea, that idea of going back to front in a mythical, whether it's live bankroll or a mythical money contest, that's something that's been espoused by the likes of Paul Sherman for many years, to have that fresh brain on the races that are likely to decide the contest. And there's just there's something a little inherently contrarian in that, when everybody else is going to maybe be, I think horse players tend to get more master of the obvious the longer they look at form. So
yeah.
if you can have your most creative brain and creative thoughts late, I think there's an inherent edge in that, and I think it's smart. Let's talk specifically about Woodbine on Saturday. If you want to pull a few spots of horses that are going to fit your strategy, I'd love to hear what they are. And these are horses, of course, that maybe people can end up betting on as well. I would imagine a lot of the horses you pick for StableDuel end up being useful betting vehicles in the pools as well.
Definitely. I've kicked myself a couple times for hitting a couple super long shots in a row and not having had any money on it. But in any case, I kind of went through and looked at my 2 most likely winners on the card. I ended up landing on the 6-horse Artie's Princess in the 12th race as my most likely winner on the card, and Forrester's Turn, the 2-horse in the second race, as my second most likely winner on the card. So those might be the two that that are short prices that I end up paying up for. So in general, I'll probably start to build my play around those. An interesting long shot that I found was in the last race, which I know kind of goes against what I said before, but I like the number 7, lucky number for me. I think we're going to turf here.
You're giving out numbers now. You're giving us number hunch plays now.
No. I just, I saw the number there. I figured I'd throw something funny in.
Give us the case on self-inflicted, or is this a product of the model?
Self-inflicted, product of the model, but I like the numbers that I have going for this horse. The finish time looks pretty good to me. It looks like it'll fit on turf for this horse. And at 10-1, looks like a pretty good buy to me, especially if I need to save some money toward the end, depending on which way I approach this. So those would be like the 3 most interesting maybe to me. In terms of, do you want to talk about the big race or
why not? Why not? It's a big deal, this Queen's Plate, and I'd love to know what the model thinks of it and how you interpret that data.
So on my speed figures, I have Curlin's Voyage as like a pretty massive overlay. I have this horse, I think, 10 points higher than any other horse in the field. These are, again, my personal speed figures, though. I have this horse as the most likely winner on the card, or in this field. The 2 to 5 looks like a pretty fair price, so it's probably a pretty fair price for StableDuel as well. If I was looking to maybe get creative and try to build an exacta around Curlin's Voyage, I might pick the 2-horse, which I don't know how to say the name. I'll kind of rely on you for that one, Pete.
Merveilleux. I actually butchered it earlier in the show, and I felt really bad about that because it's really bad on a show where I have Ashley Mailloux, who has the double L, French construction, to then I called the poor thing Merveilleux when we had Jason Portuondo. Anyway, Merveilleux, I'm very confident about that pronunciation. And you are the third person to make a little bit of a Merveilleux case on the show, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good thing. Usually it turns out to be a worse thing or a bad thing. But I'll throw a little extra weight on that horse's back. Pretty good numbers. Looks like it fits with the field. And again, I think the horse should be maybe more closer to 4-1 than 10-1. But that's just on my numbers. So
you clearly have that as a very fast race. You clearly have the Woodbine Oaks which I think all figure makers do. But it sounds like it's maybe even a little bit. It does sound like it's even stronger, the edge that you have for that race as opposed to others. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see that form stand out and for those two to run 1-2. Just looking at figures, it makes perfect sense. Really, to me, the big question is, and we talked about this before, but Clayton, who's shown these antics and still run pretty fast, supposedly training much better, if he can take a big leap forward, he can win. And I think having that information, he's worked so well lately, I'm gravitating towards that narrative. But just looking at the cold hard dope, your idea of this race coming 10-2 certainly makes a whole lot of sense.
That's what we'll be hoping for on Saturday. I think I'll actually probably only play one horse in that race. I like to try to shoot for the moon and get a winner in every race, although it's super unlikely. I just like to try to maximize the points because I think there'll be a lot of people in that game, and you might have to score pretty high to hit the top 10 or whatever the pays end up being out to.
We'll talk more about strategy and StableDuel soon, but I would imagine for somebody who uses a computer that generates an odds line, it's got to be a wonderful place to play because to some degree, I would imagine your success in StableDuel can be correlated with your ability to find a morning line that's off because it seems like the prices are correlated to the morning line. So therefore, if you have a sort of a mechanized way of finding what you'd call in the UK, where the ricks are, where the discrepancies are. I would assume that that's a piece of your success and why a computer-oriented player is particularly going to be attracted to StableDuel. Am I right with that hypothesis?
Absolutely correct. Sometimes I'll put a lineup in 5 minutes before the game goes off and just pick all the overlays that I see on relative to the morning line, just because that's where I tend to see value, and StableDuel goes off the morning line. One other piece of advice that might be helpful for people: don't forget that, like, obviously in the first race you can see the odds, the public odds, up till the race kind of goes off. And so if the public ends up betting something that you didn't see, maybe it might be helpful to take a look at that and reconsider. You can also see via the daily double will pays or probables what the horses in the second race might go off as. So if there's a tricky maiden race early on the card, really helpful to look at that information sometimes to see if there's something that's obvious to the public but wasn't potentially obvious to you.
Great stuff, John. Thank you so much for your time today. We're going to catch up with you again very soon.
Happy to share, and good luck with the rest of the show.
For our final segment today, we're leaving Toronto and heading across the sea to Ireland to talk about the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races happening in the Emerald Isle this weekend. And to discuss them with me, I'm bringing in a colleague from Sky Sports Racing. I haven't really forgiven him since what we call the Billy Ocean incident, but yet I've decided, given his racing knowledge, to make amends, to get him on here today. Kieran O'Sullivan, how are you tonight?
I'm very good, Pete. It's great to see you again. I'm glad to see that you're talking to me still. Just to explain that, basically, we had a night where Pete was tipping up plenty of winners, but if he tipped up one at 10-1, that meant he was going to sing Billy Ocean Caribbean Queen live.
I think it must have been the horse Caribbean Queen. That's the solution. But I somehow avoided it, and thankfully you didn't tell any of other colleagues. So I've been able to keep the pipes clean. But I'll tell you, at some point we'll be back in that studio in West London, and the game will be on again. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, I'm in Ireland, so that's where it's at this weekend anyway, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes' time. But look, we'd love to get back to London. It'll happen at some point, but thanks to the wonders of modern technology, we can do this like I'm in the next room beside you, haunting you.
It's pretty cool, man. It's great to be working with you again, and nice to have the roles reversed, where I get to ask you the difficult questions. And so I want to talk about these races. Obviously, we'd love winners. That's never a bad thing. But I'd also love to know if you have any insights about runners to keep an eye on, with an eye towards the Breeders' Cup, runners who might come over here. We'll kick off with the Irish Champion Stakes on Saturday. This is a win and you're in for the Longines Turf. What do you think about the race and the prospects for some possible Breeders' Cup participation here?
Well, there's plenty of possibilities anyway. I mean, when you look at the lineup that's in here, obviously Gayat jumps off the page. Really impressive. Look, he's no kind of a price, and that's no surprise because the ground, believe it or not, it's September and it isn't raining in Ireland. So I almost feel like I should apologize for that, but it is drying up. And I have a friend actually who has a horse running in a race that we'll talk about later on, and he's doing a rain dance and it's not working at all. Normally this time of year, we're wearing our wellies, but it just hasn't happened that way. It's been a strange year in many ways. Gayat, though, is going to be suited by the ground. It's going to be fine. He should be able to get it all his own way. The only question really is Aidan O'Brien's got 3 in here, and they're all decent in their own sense, not just Japan and Magical, but also Armory as well, is not to be completely written off, but may well be in there with an eye on attacking Gayat early on and just roughing him up a bit. But he's been so impressive. You can make excuses maybe for Enable at Sandown when they met, and Gayat just saw her off fairly easily. But to stay out in front all the way down that finishing straight at York against some pretty good horses, I think that shows him to be very, very good. So he's going to be hard to beat, but look, he's going to be no price whatsoever. The obvious one I would have thought in terms of value, around 13-2, is the French horse Sotsas, who was 3rd in the Arc last year. Will be staying on, probably won't have the pace to get by Gayat, but could well grab 2nd spot and could be nice from a forecast point of view.
Sister Charlie, for USA fans know Sister Charlie well, and that's the brother, Satsas. What do you think? Any chance that Gaiath would come over to race in the USA, especially if weather ends up being, I mean, you have to figure the ARC is on the dance card, but we've seen that movie before. Unknown what the ground's going to be like this year at the Breeders' Cup. We're not definitely looking at firm ground like we would be for a California BC, given that we're going to be in Keeneland. But can you see it if you squint, any of these coming over potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, last year we had Magical over there anyway, you know, and you have that link with Enable. So it is possible. I'm not entirely convinced about Gaiath from an ARC point of view in terms of the type of race that it is and the kind of stamina test it's going to turn out to be. So maybe they might well be tempted to go to the Breeders' Cup. I actually think Breeders' Cup would suit him. So I think he'd have a chance. I think he's about 4-1 or so thereabouts for that race. Whether Enable will go back over, it depends on what they do with Enable. Of course, she could go out with a blaze of glory if she was to regain the ARC. Would she then go all the way back over to the Breeders' Cup? She's done it before, of course. So it's tricky to find out exactly who's going to go there. Gaiath, though, is the kind of star at the moment. I don't know that the ARC is going to be ideal for him, though. We saw last year with Valgeist just how much the ARC can turn into a real dour battle, and there's some proper stayers in there this year. Stradivarius may even be going there, who is a super stayer, of course. I don't know if I would want him going to the ARC, but I would much rather see him go to the Breeders' Cup.
I hope it happens. I was just assuming the ARC being the race it is, that even if the ground was against them and the dynamics were against, that they would try. But listen, my friend, we've got about 8 minutes and we've got 4 races to talk about. So I'll move it along as much as I enjoy chat going a little bit further down the rabbit hole with you on this stuff. Let's next talk about the Coolmore America Justify Matron Stakes, a win and you're in for the Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf.
Yeah, top of the market, it's all about the O'Briens. Donegal O'Brien, of course, got Fancy Blue. Peaceful for his dad, Aidan O'Brien. They've kind of swapped places a little bit. Fancy Blue has the upper hand at the moment. I think the forgotten filly in here is Albania, who I do think could go back over to the Breeders' Cup. I had the pleasure of recording a programme with Jessie Harrington down at her yard in Moon in County Kildare, Commonstown. And she's an extraordinary trainer. She brought Albania over for the Breeders last year. She finished 4th, but she finished pretty well. And Shane Foley interviewed him as well. Dusty Foley, he was saying, look, she just didn't really handle the turn very well. She's learned a little bit from that. She was a little below par last time. She was second to a Joseph O'Brien filly who might turn out to be a bit better than people think. But if you look at her run in France against Fancy Blue and Peaceful, she split the pair. She was out in front, dueling for the lead all the way up that stretch. And I think she had to battle that day. And I don't think she should be, again, she's around 13-2, 6.5-1 or so. I really don't think, Pete, she should be the price she is compared to the other two. There was very little between them. And with an eye on the Breeders, Fillies and Mare's Turf, she's 20-1, whereas Fancy Blue, I think, is 10-1. I wouldn't have that, given her experience that she has and how she showed that she could run on so well in the Breeders last year. She's a bit more experienced. She should handle that turn a little bit more. I think 20-1 as an anti-post bet for the Fillies and Mare's Turf. I really wouldn't rule her out of that. And she would be my pick out of those for value at the weekend of the Matron.
Good stuff. Let's talk about the third win and you're in race at Leopardstown on Saturday. It is the Champions Juvenile Stakes. What do you think we're looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a race I thought was very interesting, very wide open for me, even though people will always look towards the top end of the market. They're always looking, of course, for the Ballydoyle runners, the Aidan O'Brien runners, Coolmore and co. I thought there was one that stood out at a big price here. And I do think we're going to get some big price winners this weekend. And that is Blue for You for Dermot Weld, who's in astonishing form. He's had no wins in the last fortnight from 29 runners. So possibly that has contributed towards the price. But Dermot Weld doesn't have that kind of thing for very long. The line of form is Blue for You, beaten Aidan O'Brien colt. Beat an Aidan O'Brien colt called Wembley on soft going at Galway over 7 furlongs. Now he's by New Approach, so he'll get the extra distance here. That won't be a problem at all. He'll be staying on nicely towards the end. He mightn't have the class of the others, but Wembley beat a horse called Sword Zorro, who was overwhelmed, laid on by Fernando Vici, who was well fancied for this race. Now, that was over a mile at Leopardstown. Swords Arrow better. Sorry, that was over a mile, but Swords Arrow is better over 7 furlongs and just got tagged late on. Now, Fernando Vici was very good that day and should improve for that as well. But just at 14-1 blue for you for Dermot Weld, I definitely think is worth the consideration. You'd want to have the binoculars out looking late on because he's going to come from the back. Because I don't think he has the pace to come from anywhere else, to be honest, like myself. But I think that he's got a decent enough future ahead of him. And I think that this kind of race, certainly a top 3 spot, is within his compass and maybe a bit better.
Let's move on to Sunday at the Curragh, starting off with the Darrenstown stud flying 5 stakes, a win in your in race for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. What do you think is going to win in here? And any thoughts about ones that might be sent over for the Breeders' Cup?
There's a whole host of English runners coming over for this, and when they send them over for the sprints, they quite often plunder these races. I sided with one called Ali for Simon and Ed Crisford. I think it'd be interesting to see if they do send him over. I mean, look, Batash is probably going to go out across the Atlantic. If he does, that'll scare away a lot of the opposition in this part of the world, because when he's on his day, and he has been on his day pretty much all summer, there's nothing really here that's going to touch him. Ali was behind him last time, ran well, finished 3rd. Curious was right behind in 4th in the Nunthorpe. Ali, though, has come over to Ireland, come over for the Sapphire Stakes at the Curragh, won on that occasion, beat a horse called Make a Challenge. If the rain comes, watch out for Make a Challenge. I was chatting to one of the owners, Walter O'Connor, today. Very decent guy from up around our part of the world. Former world handball champion, by the way.
Nice.
But anyway, Walter's, he's a gas character, but he's like myself. I think he feels that he does Make a Challenge would need rain, but if he did get the rain, he'd have a chance of reversing the form with Ali. But I think Ali has got a really good, solid chance in a competitive race. He's done it before coming over here. The Yard are in brilliant form. You've got Glass Slippers in there heading towards the Abbey. I would have thought would like a bit of cutting the ground. Curious, who's 4th in the Nunthorpe. And the pair from John Quinn as well, Liberty Beach and Keep Busy. He doesn't bring him over just for the good of his health, but I'd be sticking with Ali.
Yes, one I've been a fan of ever since the Ascot win. Tried Breeders' Cup last year. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if there was a trip excuse or what happened there, but certainly one to keep an eye on Sunday and beyond. We'll wrap up this portion of the show with the Moigler Stud Stakes, winning you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf this time around. How do you see it, my friend?
Yeah, look, Pretty Gorgeous, the favourite. She could turn out to be very, very good. Joseph O'Brien, Iridessa last year, broke his duck in the Breeders. He's an extraordinary young trainer, of course, Aidan O'Brien's son. He's won a Melbourne Cup already. He very nearly won a Triple Crown in Ireland, only for finishing 2nd on Camelot and the Ledger, of course, which is this weekend. That hadn't been done since Nijinsky in 1970, wasn't it? The year before I was born, all that time ago. But one I like at the price, Gerald Lyons got Angel Palm. I like the way that one ran last time. I'd be very surprised, though, if Angel Palm was good enough to beat Pretty Gorgeous. But I think Pretty Gorgeous could turn out to be quite special. But, you know, she's around even money. I mean, I can't remember last time I backed something at even money, Pete, Can you?
I can't remember when you can, but I know when I did, and it wasn't a very pleasurable experience in this year's Kentucky Derby. I'll put it that way. Was
it recent?
Saturday.
I thought it might be.
You know me, I always, as I like to say on the shows, and especially when you're dealing with fixed odds, it becomes a lot more doable. Better a short price than a long face. But is this a situation where you will consider the evens?
I'd consider it. I probably won't back it, though. Look, I wouldn't put anyone off for, though. If you didn't mind backing even money, which I might do the odd time kind of thing. But I like your expression. I kind of agree with it. Always give me a hard truth rather than a soft lie. Anyway.
I mean, value. To me, value just means the chance is better than the price suggests, and that happens. There are horses I see that I think are 70% to win, and you can, especially over there where you can lock in even money on those. Those are some of the best bets I'll make in a year. A lot harder when you have the slipping prices of the tote system. But that's the game in America, and the reason I think why we gravitate more towards the exotic wagering in general than the fixed odds opportunities available to you. But I've kept you long enough. I appreciate you coming on here, extending your work day into the evening. Great getting a chance to talk with you, and I look forward to doing it again soon. Plenty of opportunity to talk about international form in the run-up to this year's Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. My wife has been so happy to get me out of the house in the evening. We've got peace and quiet. She would probably call you after this to thank you, send you some flowers. I hope you have a very profitable weekend.
Kieran, thank you so much. We'll be talking soon, my friend.
Pleasure.
That's going to do it for today's show. We'll start off by thanking all of today's guests, starting off with Jason Portuondo, Ashley Mailloux, John Camardo, and Kieran O'Sullivan. We'd also like to thank our partners, of course, our friends at Racing Picks. They get top billing on this show, but also our friends at Woodbine, StableDuel. We really appreciate your support. And if you like the content we're putting out and you support our partners, we'll get to keep bringing you all this good, free stuff. And we'll throw in some thank yous to our founding partners today as well, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and 10 Strike Racing. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your Queen's Plate Day photos.
Just me.